What happens when a billionaire denies a child is his? Only to discover a truth so shocking, it shatters everything he thought he knew? But just when you think the story ends, a single confession from the woman he loves changes everything, again. This is not just a story about success. It is about redemption, betrayal, and the family you never expected. Stay till the end. Because one DNA test changed his legacy forever. But love rewrote it. Before we dive into this incredible story, do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. This is not just entertainment. Every story here carries a meaningful moral lesson that can touch your heart, open your mind, and maybe change your life. Billionaire refused to believe she was pregnant, but one DNA test changed his legacy forever. I used to believe that numbers never lied. Balance sheets, profit margins, percentile growth. They all made sense to me. People? They were messy, emotional, unpredictable. So I built walls. Not of brick and stone, but of meetings, deals, deadlines. I stayed safe behind success. My name is Ethan Cole, founder of Cole Tech Industries. A name that rings in boardrooms and bank vaults. But not in hearts. At 37, I had everything. Jets, penthouses, stock options worth more than some countries. And yet there were nights I stared out the window and felt nothing but silence screaming back at me. Then she came. A knock on my office door. That was not scheduled in my calendar. Her name was Lila. Soft voice, unshakable eyes, and a trembling letter in her hand. She used to work at one of our early labs. Years ago. Back when I still walked through the offices. Back when I smiled at interns. Because I was not yet made of steel. She looked at me like I was still human. And that was the most uncomfortable part. Ethan, she said, this is not a lawsuit. This is not about money. She handed me a photo. A boy. Brown curls. Eyes that looked disturbingly like mine. When I was young. And not yet cold. I tried to tell you, she whispered. But your assistant blocked me for years. I stopped trying. Until he asked me why he does not have a father. I felt the blood in my face rise like fire, then drop like stone. I laughed. A stiff, defensive, arrogant laugh. There is no way. I was too careful, too logical, too protected. But there was something in her sadness that made me agree to the test. Just to prove her wrong. 3 weeks passed. And in those 21 days, I found myself checking my phone. Like a schoolboy waiting for grades. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. White. Thin. But heavier than any document I had ever signed. Positive. One word. A confirmation. That I was a father. My hands shook. I had closed billion-dollar deals with less emotion. But this shattered me. I remembered the day she left the company. She was quiet. No drama. No accusation. I never noticed. I never asked. Now I saw the cost of that silence. His name was Noah. 7 years old. He loved dinosaurs. And strawberry pancakes. The first time I saw him, he hid behind her legs. He did not call me Dad. He called me Sir. Like I was a stranger in a suit. And not the man who helped bring him into this world. Lila gave me space. But she also gave me truth. You do not get to buy his love, she said. You have to earn it. The way I earned every day without you. That sentence cut deeper than any insult ever could. Because it was not spoken in anger. It was spoken in grace. So I started small. Building Legos. With hands that once built empires. Reading bedtime stories. With a voice that once dictated board meetings. And with every laugh. Every awkward hug. Every tear wiped from his cheek. I began to feel human again. But the world I built did not forget. Board members questioned my distraction. Partners whispered about emotional instability. And one night, just as I held Noah's science project in my hands, I received an ultimatum. Choose the company, or step down. I stared at the email, and then at the handmade volcano that Noah had spent 2 nights perfecting. And for the first time in my billion-dollar life, the choice was not hard. I walked away, not from success, but from the version of success that left no room for love. But not everyone let go so easily.
2 months later,
I received a letter.
from a lawyer,
Filed by someone I once trusted. The letter claimed that Noah
was not my son. That the DNA test
had been tampered with.
that Lila
Had manipulated me.
and now the court
Wanted a second test.
I looked at Noah
As he slept beside his stuffed dinosaur. And I wondered what truth really meant. In a world built on lies. I stared at that letter.
for what felt like hours. My hands were calm, but my heart,
It roared like a storm I could not silence.
had I been a fool?
Was I just a pawn in someone's quiet game? I remembered Lila's face. When she handed me that first letter.
Not a trace of deception, only fear and hope.
And I remembered every moment since then.
Noah's quiet laugh, his questions, the way he held my hand.
As if it was always meant to be there. Still, I had been burned before.
Lied to, used,
So I sat down.
and I called her.
When she answered, there was no hesitation. I expected this, she said. They will try everything to push you back into your old life. I wanted to believe her. But belief is fragile. When it has been tested by power, pride, and betrayal.
I need to know, I said. One more time. She was silent. Then whispered, I understand.
The second test was arranged.
Private. Discreet.
I watched as Noah swabbed his cheek. Laughing at how funny it tickled.
He had no idea what hung in the balance.
I told myself I would prepare.
For any result.
But deep inside,
I knew the truth would break me.
if it turned out to be a lie.
I stayed awake that night.
Walking from window to window. The silence of the city felt heavier than usual. Lila sent me a message.
At 2:13 a.m.
No matter what that test says. You were the only man who ever showed up for him. That makes you more of a father than biology ever could. I read those words. Until the sky began to lighten. The results arrived 2 days later. In the same kind of envelope.
Thin. But unbearable.
I did not open it alone. Lila stood beside me.
Her hands clenched tightly. I held it up to the light.
As if that would make the truth any clearer.
Then I opened it. One line. Clear.
Scientific.
Undeniable.
99.99% probability of paternity.
He was mine. My son.
I felt the air rush out of me. Like I had been holding my breath. For 7 years. Lila let out a sound. That was halfway between a laugh and a sob.
And I dropped to my knees.
Because I had never believed in miracles.
Until that moment.
But not everyone was happy. The man behind the accusation, a former partner of mine, had more invested in my downfall than I realized.
He leaked the paternity scandal to the press. Headlines exploded.
Billionaire caught in secret love child scandal. Was the legacy of Ethan Cole built on lies?
My name,
Which once meant power, now tasted like shame.
but this time, I did not run. I held a press conference.
With Noah on one side, and Lila on the other. I told the world that the greatest profit I had ever made was learning how to love. The cameras clicked.
The headlines changed. But behind the noise was a deeper war.
Because the man who tried to destroy me
Was not done.
he filed a lawsuit. One that could unravel everything I had built.
And the first court date
Was set for the following week. I knew what I had to do. Not just to protect my company, but to protect my son's name.
to protect Lila's honor. To protect the truth.
We had fought so hard to find. But the night before the trial, I received a phone call. That would change everything. A call that would force me to choose between vengeance
And grace.
The phone buzzed in the quiet of Noah's room. He was asleep beside me, curled up under his favorite blanket, with that same dinosaur clutched to his chest. I stepped out quietly, my fingers trembling, as I swiped to answer. It was my lawyer.
But his voice.
It did not carry the confidence I was used to. There is something you need to hear.
He said. He took a breath.
Then played a recording.
A conversation. 2 voices.
One was my former partner,
Victor Hale. The other. A reporter.
In the recording,
Victor laughed.
the kid is his.
I know it.
But if I can make him look unstable, the board will beg me to come back. I built half that empire. I will burn the other half to the ground, before I let him rewrite history with some charity case family.
My jaw clenched. The truth was all there.
Spoken so plainly, so proudly. He was never after justice. He was after my legacy. And he had just handed me the match.
To light his own downfall.
My lawyer asked, "Do we submit this to the court tomorrow?" I stared at the night sky. Beyond my bedroom window, I could hear Noah breathing
peacefully.
Lila's soft voice echoed in my memory. "You were the only man who ever showed up for him."
This was my chance. To crush Victor.
To reclaim everything.
To watch him drown.
In the lies he had stirred. But something inside me refused to move. Because in that silence, I saw who I used to be.
Ruthless. Sharp. Void of compassion. And I realized, if I used this tape only to win, then I would become him. I stood in that moment, torn between justice and grace. And then, a soft knock.
Lila stood at the doorway,
her eyes sleepy, but curious.
"You are not in bed," she said gently. I handed her the phone. Let her hear every word. She said nothing.
For a long time.
Then she looked up at me.
And said something.
That would shape everything that came next. Winning does not mean destroying. Sometimes, it means forgiving.
Before they expect it.
So they never forget it. I wanted to argue.
To rage. To punish. But her words
wrapped around my anger.
And quieted it. We stayed up. Till dawn. Planning. Rewriting.
Not just the legal strategy, but the narrative of our lives. Because I no longer wanted to just win a courtroom. I wanted to win a future my son could look up to.
But the trial
did not go as expected. Victor had one more move.
One I never saw coming.
And when the judge asked him to speak,
he stood, smiling, and said a name I had not heard
in over 15 years.
A name that should have stayed buried. He said, "Your Honor,
I would like to call a surprise witness. Someone who can speak to Mr. Cole's past."
The courtroom turned. And then she walked in. Not Lila. Not an associate. But her. The one woman I had betrayed.
Long before I ever met Lila.
The one mistake
I had locked away. In the darkest corner of my memory.
She stepped forward.
And I felt the ground shift beneath me. Because in that moment,
I realized Victor's game
was not just about my company. It was about my soul.
Her name was Clara. And I had not seen her
since the night I walked out of her life. Without a word. She wore a navy blue coat. The same shade she used to wear when she waited outside my office. In the freezing rain. Just to say hello. I never returned those visits. I never said goodbye.
And now, there she stood.
Not as a memory, but as Victor's weapon.
My heart pounded. As she stepped onto the witness stand.
Victor's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Miss Clara Devine has information about Mr. Cole's pattern of abandonment and dishonesty."
The judge nodded. The court went still. And Clara began. Her voice was softer
than I remembered. But it carried a weight only betrayal could forge. She spoke of the early days. Back when I was just a hungry man. With big dreams and cold eyes. She spoke of late-night calls.
Empty promises.
A ring she never received.
And then, she paused.
Her eyes met mine. Not with hatred, but with something far worse.
Disappointment. "I do not hate him," she said.
"I want to. But I do not." Victor looked confused.
She continued.
Ethan was a man chasing ghosts. He did not lie to hurt people. He lied because he was afraid to feel anything real. The room fell into silence. I felt Lila's hand tighten around mine. From the gallery. No judgment. Just quiet strength. Then Clara looked at the judge. "Everything I said is true. But it is also true that the man sitting here today is not the man I knew 15 years ago." Victor stood. "Objection, Your Honor." The judge raised his hand. "Let her speak." Clara inhaled deeply. I read the articles. I saw him hold that child's hand.
I watched the press conference.
And something in me broke.
Because I realized.
He finally became the man I always hoped he could be. She turned to me one last time. And I needed to say that.
Out loud. Because sometimes.
Closure is not revenge.
It is release. Then she stepped down. And walked past Victor.
Without even looking at him.
The courtroom was stunned.
Victor's smirk faded.
The judge took a moment.
Then called for recess. I sat back in my chair.
Shaking. Not from fear.
But from the sudden collapse.
Of a part of my past. I had never faced.
Lila approached me slowly.
Noah held her hand.
He looked up at me. Innocent eyes searching. Was she someone you loved before Mommy?
I swallowed. Kneeled. And told him the truth. Yes. And I hurt her.
But she forgave me. That is what makes love so powerful. It does not forget. But it chooses to heal.
Noah nodded. As if he understood more.
Than I ever could at his age. But the trial was not over. That afternoon. Victor made his final move. He presented documents. Ones that had my signature. But I had no memory of signing. Financial reports. Alleged mismanagement. Funds wired to foreign accounts. And suddenly, the tone of the trial shifted. Accusations filled the air. Whispers turned into roars.
The judge's face tightened.
And my lawyer leaned in. His voice low. These could put you in prison, Ethan.
I froze.
Because if these documents were real, then someone had forged my name. With full access to everything I built.
Someone.
Inside my circle.
I turned to Lila.
And her eyes said it before her lips did. We need to find out. Who did this? Before it is too late.
We left the courtroom.
As the media storm gathered outside.
Microphones. Flashing lights.
Accusations thrown like knives. But none of them pierced me.
Like the thought. That someone close. Had forged my name. Someone I trusted. We drove in silence. Noah in the back seat. Coloring dinosaurs. Like the world outside was not falling apart. Lila sat beside me. Her hand on mine. Anchoring me to something real. That night. I did not sleep. I opened my old files. Scanned every document. Every contract. Every signature. There. A memo marked 2 years ago. An internal audit I vaguely remembered. Signed by me. But dated during the week. I had been in recovery. After a car accident. I checked the hospital records. I was sedated the entire day. No chance I had signed anything. And yet, there was my signature. Perfect. I zoomed in. Took a screenshot. Sent it to my legal team. But I already knew. There was only one man. With that level of access. My chief financial officer. Nathan Grant. We had started together. College roommates. He knew my passwords. My signature. My rhythm. I had called him brother. More than once. Now he was trying. To bury me. The betrayal. Felt like a punch to the chest. Lila sat down beside me. I always felt something strange around him, she said. Like he wanted your life. But not your soul. I nodded. Because it was true. Nathan never loved the mission. He loved the empire. The attention. The illusion. And now he was trying. To take it all. But I would not let him. I met with my lawyer the next morning. We pulled every access log. Every authorization trail. We needed proof. We needed it fast. Meanwhile, Victor's team grew louder. The press grew bolder. And public trust began to crumble. Shareholders called. Banks hesitated. The legacy I had built, with my blood, and time, and soul, was on the brink. And Noah, he felt it. One night he asked, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" I could not lie to him. "We might lose some things," I said, "but we will never lose each other." He nodded, then did something that shattered me. He handed me a crayon drawing. It showed me Lila and him standing on a hill above us. A sentence in crooked, bold letters. The world tried to break us, but love made us stronger. I held that paper like it was the only truth left, because it was. But the next morning, an unexpected visitor arrived. The receptionist called my cell. "There is someone here who says she can prove who forged the documents."
She will only speak to you in private.
I rushed downstairs. And when I saw her, I froze. It was Nathan's assistant, Emily. She looked nervous, pale, but determined.
I cannot live with what I know anymore.
She said, I have the backups, the emails, the bank trail, everything. My breath caught. But before I could speak,
She added one more thing. Nathan knows I have them. He is not going to let this go quietly.
I knew then.
This would not just be a legal battle.
This would be a war. To protect the truth. My son. My love.
And the legacy. Built not from steel or stock,
but from redemption.
I took Emily to the upper conference room.
The one with no cameras. No windows. Just four walls.
And the silence between them. She placed a flash drive on the table. As if it weighed more than gold. I copied everything the night he threatened me.
She said. Emails. Transaction logs.
Even a video clip from his office.
Her hands trembled.
He thought I was too loyal, she whispered. But I watched what he did to you.
And to her. She meant Lila.
And in that moment, something inside me shifted. This was not just a betrayal.
It was a pattern. A sickness.
And it needed to be cut out at the root. I copied the files.
Onto a secure server. Then called Lila. Her voice was calm. Steady. I will come to you, she said.
You do not have to carry this alone anymore.
That night,
we reviewed the evidence together. Nathan had forged my signature.
More than 12 times.
He had rerouted funds.
Into offshore accounts. Under shell companies.
With names traced back to Victor's legal firm. They were working together. Using my past.
My pain.
Even my child.
As tools.
To dismantle everything I had built. But they underestimated something.
They thought power
came from control.
From lies. But real power comes from truth.
And those who stand by it. Even when it hurts. The next morning, we submitted the files to federal authorities.
And then I walked into the courtroom.
With Emily by my side. Victor's smug expression faltered.
The moment he saw her.
Nathan's seat was empty.
He knew.
The judge entered. Gavel struck. My lawyer stood.
Your Honor.
With the court's permission, we would like to introduce new evidence. That changes the nature of this trial completely. The judge glanced at the files. Brows furrowed.
Then nodded.
As the data appeared on the screen,
Victor's face turned. From red to white. The room watched.
In frozen disbelief. As email after email revealed a network of deceit, manipulation, and financial fraud. Victor stood up suddenly. I want to request a recess. The judge interrupted. You will sit down, Mr. Hale.
Now.
And for the first time, I saw fear in the eyes of the man who had once tried to erase me. When court adjourned,
the media outside
was waiting like wolves. But this time,
I held Noah's hand.
As I stepped into the camera's light, Lila stood beside me.
Strong.
I looked into the flashing lenses and said one thing. People think power is money.
It is not.
Power is doing the right thing. When everyone expects you to fail. Power is choosing love. When hate is easier. Power is standing back up. Even when the world roots for your fall. The next week, Nathan was arrested.
Victor was disbarred. And the empire,
that once stood on cold ambition,
now stood on truth.
But just when peace began to settle, Lila received a message.
From someone in her past. A message
that would pull us into a new storm. One that would test our bond. In a way we never imagined. Because the secret she had buried for years was finally coming to light.
And it would change everything. Once again.
Lila sat across from me. In the quiet of our garden. Where the wind whispered through olive trees. And Noah played in the grass. With his shoes off. And wonder in his eyes. She held the letter in her hands. Like it was made of fire. I never told you, she said softly.
Because I was afraid.
That the truth would undo everything we had rebuilt.
I nodded.
Not in anger.
But in readiness.
Because we had walked through fire before.
And come out stronger.
She handed me the envelope. Inside was a photograph.
A young woman. Maybe 19.
Eyes like Lila's. Smile like Noah's. My sister, Lila whispered. She passed away 7 years ago. I raised her daughter.
As my own. I looked at her. Then at the photo. You mean, I began. Noah is her son, she said. Not mine.
But I never planned to lie. I just fell in love with him. And when you came back into our lives, I saw how much you loved him too.
And I was afraid
that if you knew the truth, you might leave again. Silence settled between us. But it was not heavy. It was sacred.
I stood.
Walked to the edge of the garden, where Noah now waved at a butterfly.
And I smiled. Because love
is not bound by biology. It is bound by presence.
By choices. By sacrifice. And by grace. I turned to her.
Then he is ours, I said. Because what makes a parent
is not blood. It is love. She wept then.
But it was not sorrow.
It was release.
And as we embraced, I realized something
so powerful.
It shook the last pieces of my old self loose.
All my life, I chased perfection, success, control.
But the real victory was surrendering to what I could never plan for. The people who chose to love me,
despite my flaws.
Noah ran up to us, grinning, holding a tiny flower in his muddy hand. For you, he said,
looking up at Lila. She bent down,
took it gently,
and kissed his forehead. That moment
was more valuable than all the stock in my portfolio.
And I knew then
we had already won. Moral of the story. True legacy is not built in boardrooms.
It is built in hearts.
Forgiveness is not weakness. It is the greatest act of strength. And the family you choose, even when broken by loss or truth, can become the very thing that heals you. Because love, honest, enduring, imperfect love, will always be the most powerful story we ever write. We would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your feedback helps us create even more powerful, meaningful stories that truly connect with you. Your voice matters here.